Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 130 based on novel. So let's start. The two Dalu sword sect elders both almost coughed out blood at the same time as their bodies exploded backwards, leaving behind deep footprints in the ground. Every footprint they left caused the ground to tremble slightly. As the grey gas spread, one strand of it shot out like a sword. Its target wasn't the two elders but the soul formation old man, Lusengi, who was trying to secretly harvest the brilliant golden fruits. Lusengi's expression changed greatly. He knew that couldn't move in time, so he began to teleport. He knew that teleporting here was very dangerous, but at this moment, he couldn't worry about it too much. His figure began to distort and was about to disappear. However, a cold snort came from within the grey gas as it was charging at him. After the snort, the grey gas suddenly closed and broke through the distorted space. In the blink of an eye, it charged through Lusengi's body just before he could teleport away. You? Lusengi's expression changed greatly and he was about to speak, but his body suddenly trembled and began to expand like a balloon. This scene was simply too strange. Lusengi's body reached its limit before boom. A Dalu sword sect soul formation cultivator was forced to explode just like that. Bang bang bang. The sound was still echoing inside the valley while a large amount of flesh and blood rained to the ground. A faint blood mist slowly surrounded the area. In the blood mist, a figure wearing purple slowly walked into the valley. This person had long hair that was casually flowing behind his head. His face wasn't handsome, but he gave off an out-of-this-world feeling. On his finger there were two rays of grey gas moving around like two small dragons. On his waist there was a purple token with the word 7 carved onto it. Wang Lin's appearance caused the entire valley to become completely silent. Guoxingyi's face was completely pale without any trace of blood, and his body was faintly trembling. His right hand clenched onto his sword until his fingers went white. His junior apprentice sister revealed a look of terror. Finally, she wasn't able to stand it anymore and so she knelt down to puke. Her face was extremely pale. As for the blue-robed young man who didn't seem to be from the Dalu sword sect, he looked even more intoxicated than before as he took a deep breath of this air that tasted like blood. Aside from the three of them, the woman named Qian Qin revealed an unsettling and struggling expression. This junior's cultivation and mentality weren't strong enough to be comparable to the two elders. Although the two of them had their hearts shaken up and realized that things had gone south, their expressions were calm and only a bit ugly. Wang Lin's expression was calm as his gaze swept past each of them. Then his hand randomly pointed at the air and strands of grey gas came out from the scattered flesh inside the valley and quickly gathered together. A big cloud of grey gas was formed and quickly moved toward Wang Lin's finger. A large amount of grey gas gathered toward Wang Lin's finger to form a ball at his fingertip. The ball was very cloudy and contained a mysterious force, so when one looked at it, they couldn't stop themselves from staring. Wang Lin's eyes were calm as he casually squeezed his finger. There was a fluctuation of energy coming from inside the ball, causing it to shrink until it was only the size of a fingernail. Wang Lin grabbed it with his hand, and when he opened his hand, the grey ball of gas was gone. The Dalu sword sect Shifang looked at the token on Wang Lin's waist before saying, word for word, Heavenly Fate Sect, Purple Division 7th Disciple, Wang Lin. Wang Lin withdrew his hand, then he looked at Shifang and said, answer one of my questions and I'll let one of you go today. Shifang began to laugh as if he had heard the funniest thing in the world. His right hand formed a seal and pointed at the sky. Then a powerful sword energy came from the sheath on his back. The sword energy was green, and it ascended into the sky. Shifang sneered, Wang Lin, Although you are a mid-stage soul transformation cultivator, with the two of us at the early stage along with our sword treasures from the sect, even if you were to kill us, you would be seriously injured. Let's see how you will go to the Eastern Demonic Spirit Sea when it opens in 1.5 months. He had already heard rumors of the list of people chosen to enter the Eastern Demonic Spirit Sea. He heard that the newly accepted Purple Division's 7th disciple was one of the people chosen. Now that he had seen Wang Lin, he decided to gamble. He gambled that Wang Lin wouldn't dare to casually act against them because they both could retaliate in full force and end up injuring him. This would mess up Wang Lin's trip to the Eastern Demonic Spirit Sea. The short elder hadn't spoken a word since Wang Lin appeared, but his eyes had been locked onto him. Now that he heard Wang Lin's words, he secretly realized that something was wrong. According to his observations, this person was not one to do things without carefully considering them beforehand. Rather than wasting time talking to this person, he would rather they team up and take this chance to attack now. Their chance of winning against a mid-stage soul transformation cultivator with two early-stage soul transformation cultivators was already not high. The short elder clenched his teeth, and without a word he began to move. He slapped his bag of holding and a blood-colored flag appeared in his hand. With one wave, a blood mist came out from the flag and immediately covered his entire body. "Accept your death." The short elder let out a shout as his hand formed seals and he viciously sent out his palms. Several bloody palm prints that carried the smell of blood suddenly appeared within the blood mist and shot toward Wang Lin. At the same time, the short elder bit his tongue and spat out a large amount of essence blood. The color of this blood had a hint of gold, and after he coughed out the blood, he began to chant. He chanted like a ghost, making it hard to hear, but a mysterious force suddenly appeared as if it had descended from the heavens. "Heavenly Ghost Devour." After finishing the chant, the short elder's eyes lit up. With a loud shout, the slightly golden essence blood began to move in a mysterious way, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. At the moment it disappeared, a 100-foot-tall illusionary head suddenly appeared behind the short elder. This head was very big and it was greenish-black. There was no hair on the head, and it looked like a vicious ghost. Although the head was illusionary, it looked corporeal and gave off a cold aura. The moment the head appeared, it let out a roar and flew out from behind the short elder and charged toward Wang Lin. The short elder shouted, "Attack!" Shifang clenched his teeth. Without a word, his hand formed a seal and slashed down. The sword behind his back let out an earth-shattering sword hymn and suddenly charged toward Wang Lin like a vicious dragon. At the same time, Shifang still found that their chances were not good, so he spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Next, he sat down in the lotus position and caught his essence blood at the center of his palm. Then he let out a roar and slapped it on his forehead. With a thunderous thud, Shifang's body trembled, and a ball of green light came out from his forehead. In the green light, Shifang's origin soul suddenly flew out, then he opened his mouth and blinding, green light shined from his mouth. The green light turned into a sword as long as a finger with a willow leaf carved onto it. His origin soul entered this sword and quickly chased after the sword energy he had just sent out. "Accept your death." The two early-stage Da Lu sword sect elders were already fighting with all they had. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he stood there, and his gaze remained the same. He took one step, raised his hand, pressed at the air, and black light appeared on his fingers. Finger of death. With one finger, tens of thousands of souls die. With one finger, all of the grass in the valley turned brown, and even the already withered leaves began to collapse. They weren't just collapsing on the outside, even the roots collapsed. The several bloody palms that were charging toward Wang Lin now collided with his finger, and without any pause, they all immediately collapsed. However, if they had just collapsed, then it wouldn't show the true power of the finger of death. The blood print that was breaking apart was slowly retreating, but before it was able to retreat far, it was immediately pulled back toward Wang Lin's finger due to the power of the finger of death. This scene happened extremely fast. From the outside, it looked like when Wang Lin's thumb had pressed down on the bloody palms, they were absorbed by his thumb, and it now had a blood-red color. After absorbing the power of the blood palm, Wang Lin's eyes became even colder. Not only did the thumb not stop, it moved even faster. Wang Lin bypassed the sword energy from Shifang and then immediately pressed his thumb down between the brows of the ghostly head. The ghostly head's eyes released a ghostly light, and at the moment Wang Lin's thumb arrived, it opened its mouth and swallowed Wang Lin's thumb. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he let out a smile. "Since you want to devour, then I'll let you devour your fill." With that, Wang Lin's thumb began to glow red as he pushed all the power he had absorbed from the bloody palms into the head. At the same time, a sliver of the destructive force from the finger of death that could destroy everything entered the head as well. The ghostly head immediately began to expand. A cry came from the head as he immediately began to retreat, but he only retreated 30 feet before he exploded with a bang. The short elder's life spell was broken, causing his face to immediately turn pale and cough out a large mouthful of blood. His eyes are filled with terror as he turned around and ran without any hesitation. He was truly scared. He once used this heavenly ghost devour spell against a mid-stage soul transformation cultivator. Although that mid-stage soul transformation cultivator was able to break it in the end, he was in danger the entire time. But Wang Lin was able to break it so casually, how could he not run? Wang Lin coldly looked at where the short elder was escaping to and slapped his bag of holding, bringing the celestial sword out. From within the celestial sword came Shuligua's arrogant voice. "Grandson, don't run. Your grandpa Shu will let my junior brother play with you." As soon as the voice came from the flying sword, the half-moon blade immediately charged out toward the short elder. All of this happened extremely fast. In almost an instant, Wang Lin broke the bloody palms, destroyed the ghostly head, and caused the short elder to run for his life. At this moment, Shifang's sword energy was quickly closing in on Wang Lin. Wang Lin turned around and saw Shifang's origin soul, which was on the small sword behind the sword energy. His expression remained the same, his body didn't move, and he only raised his left arm. Metal celestial energy suddenly came from his left arm and filled the valley. At the same time, his left arm was like the sun releasing a blinding, golden light, and a vortex slowly condensed at the center of his palm. "For cycle metal celestial spiritual energy," said Wang Lin softly as he gently pushed his palm forward. With a series of rumbling sounds, the golden vortex in his hand suddenly charged out and directly collided with the sword energy. At this moment, a large number of cracks appeared in the valley, and even many of the surrounding mountains began to collapse. After the sword energy was the small sword with the willow leaf engraved on it. It charged through the air past the collision and went directly toward the area between Wang Lin's brows. Its speed was extremely fast, so although Wang Lin was at the mid-stage of soul transformation, even he didn't want to mess with an early-stage soul transformation cultivator who was going all out by merging their origin soul with their life-saving spell. However, this was only true before he had the soul lasher. Now, his expression didn't even change. He quickly backed up as he touched his bag of holding and a black shadow suddenly appeared, breaking the sound barrier right when it came out. With a crisp sound, the small sword trembled as if it had been hit by a powerful force, and its speed immediately decreased. There was another crisp sound as the whip hit the sword. An angry roar came from the small sword, and a green flame suddenly condensed around it. It broke through space and immediately appeared 3 inches away from Wang Lin's forehead. "Oh! Desperate now?" Wang Lin quickly backed up as the whip moved at lightning speed toward the sword. With a series of crisp sounds, the whip landed on the small sword, causing a series of miserable screams to come from it. In the end, a large amount of black gas poured out of it. It immediately stopped charging at Wang Lin and turned around to escape, except now the light on the sword was extremely faint. A large amount of black gas came out from the small sword and turned into the shape of Shifang. The current him was extremely weak, it was as if a gentle breeze could make him collapse. Shifang wanted to return to his body, but Wang Lin wouldn't give him that chance. Just as his origin soul was about to condense, Wang Lin's right hand pointed forward and a ray of green light shot out. The target wasn't Shifang's origin soul but his body. Shafang watched as the green light turned into a giant monster. The most eye-catching part of this monster was its sharp mouth. At this moment, the sharp mouth was moving at lightning speed as it descended from above, then it pierced through Shafang's head and stabbed deep into his body. Shafang's essence, blood, and flesh, along with some remaining celestial spiritual energy and anything that was devourable, were sucked dry in an instant. In the end, all that remained was a corpse. Shafang's origin soul that had just formed from the small sword stared dumbfoundedly at what just happened. He turned around to give Wang Lin a vicious look before flying toward the juniors in the distance. There were 4 juniors, 2 male and 2 female. Shafang didn't hesitate at all as he charged toward Guo Xingyi. Guo Xingyi was confused. He didn't know why the elder was charging toward him. His vision suddenly went dark and there was suddenly a wound on his forehead. It was the small sword, it had pierced through it. Guo Xingyi's body trembled and his eyes dimmed. However, his eyes suddenly lit up once more, but there was a strong sense of weakness coming from those eyes. Wang Lin's eyes became serious as he looked at the scene with interest. It has to be said that possession was not simple, even Sichu Nan took more than 10 days to complete the possession. However, this elder was able to immediately regain his sanity and looked like he had already completed a majority of the possession process. This point surprised Wang Lin. At this moment, Guo Xingyi's face was pale. He stared at Wang Lin and quickly said, "Fellow cultivator Wang, everything was my fault this time. If you let me leave, I'll give you the method of this quick possession technique. I also swear by my true soul that I'll never speak of the matter here today." With that, Shafang waved his hand, and aside from Qian Qin, the other 2 immediately exploded and died. "Fellow cultivator Wang, this girl, Qian Qin, is still a virgin. I have a spell that can use virgins to heal your wounds. If you let me go, I'll gift that to you as well." Shafang's heart pounded extremely fast as he looked at Wang Lin. If he hadn't been forced into a corner, he wouldn't be begging like this. Qian Qin's body trembled after hearing Shafang's words. She looked at Wang Lin with a complex expression before clenching her teeth, kneeling down to the ground, and softly saying, "I beg Senior to please kill this person and the other Da Lu Sword Sect Elder. Qian Qin doesn't have anything to give, but I am willing to spend my life serving Senior like a cattle or a horse." Shafang's face was gloomy, and a hint of killing intent flashed across his eyes. Wang Lin's expression remained the same as he slowly said, "Do you know if there was anything abnormal when Sword Saint Ling Qian who returned from the Celestial Realm 200 years ago?" 200 years ago, Shafang was startled. He pondered a bit before his eyes lit up. He looked at Wang Lin and asked, "Could it be that you're talking that sword spirit?" Wang Lin's eyes became serious and he said, "Tell me about it." Shafang pondered. After a long time, he bitterly said, "I only heard about it, so I don't know the details. I heard that the Sword Saint was a mess when he returned, and after that, a series of murders occurred inside the sect. Finally, an unknown sword spirit appeared and had a huge battle with the Sword Saint. After that, the sword spirit disappeared. No one knows where it went." Wang Lin looked at Shafang. This person was not telling the truth. Wang Lin's expression didn't change as he calmly said, "Place your fast possession method in a jade and give it to me." Shafang raised his head. He looked at Wang Lin and said, "Do you agree to let me go?" Wang Lin coldly looked at this person and said, "That will depend on whether what you imprinted on the jade is real or fake." Shafang clenched his teeth as he took out a jade and imprinted the possession technique and the healing spell on it. Then he threw the jade directly at Wang Lin. Wang Lin raised his hand to catch it and began to read it with his divine sense. He directly skipped past the spell that used a virgin to heal and focused on the possession technique. Shafang's eyes lit up, and without any hesitation, he began to move. He charged into the distance and was about to leave the valley. Wang Lin didn't even look at him as he pointed at him with his left finger. The grey gas that had been circling his finger suddenly shot out toward Shafang, breaking the sound barrier in the process. Shafang immediately noticed. He jerked his head around and shouted, "Wang Lin, are you still a cultivator?" His body flickered. He was about to teleport, but he had just finished possessing this body, so everything was in a weakened state. Just as his body began to use celestial spiritual energy, the two strands of grey gas suddenly sped up and closed in on him at an unimaginable speed. Shifang's pupils shrank, then his body trembled a bit and stopped moving. The two strands of grey had already entered his body and cycled through him like crazy along his veins. After 3 breaths of time, with a loud bang, Shifang's body suddenly collapsed. A large amount of flesh and blood rained from the sky again, and grey gas once again gathered from the flesh and returned to Wang Lin. Wang Lin raised his head and his divine sense withdrew from the jade. This fast possession technique does have some value. Wang Lin put the jade away and looked into the distance. That was where the half-moon blade and celestial sword were. The short elder was trapped by them and was waiting for Wang Lin's questioning. Wang Lin didn't immediately move there but slowly walked to west side of the valley. This was where all the flowers were. He squatted down, picked up a fruit, and smelled it. Wang Lin's action caused the mosquito beast that just ate Shifang's body begin to rapid beat its wings. Its eyes revealed a willingness to please. Even the woman named Qian Qin's eyes became serious as she looked at the brilliant golden fruit in Wang Lin's hand, and she couldn't help but sigh. Her sect had spent a lot of effort to find the brilliant golden fruit, but they unexpectedly met the people of the Da Lu Sword sect. She originally thought that everything was set in stone, but then there was a sudden change that resulted in the scene before her. The sudden appearance of the Heavenly Fate sect's Purple Division's 7th disciple, Wang Lin, easily changed everything. Wang Lin softly whispered, "Don't worry." After the mosquito heard this, it quickly nodded. Its eyes contained a hint of fanaticism. As Wang Lin held the brilliant golden fruit, he wanted to test if this fruit could fill up the metal element of the heaven-defying bead. If not, then he would just feed it to the mosquito beast. The heaven-defying bead was only missing the metal element after the battle at the Suzaku tomb. It was still missing half of the required element. Wang Lin pressed the brilliant golden fruit against his forehead, and it went inside it. After a while, he revealed a look of disappointment and loosened his hand. I was too impatient. How could completing the heaven-defying bead be such a simple matter? 700 years of cultivation, and even with my luck, I was only able to complete 4 of the elements. Every completion was filled with danger, so I believe that the completion of this last metal element won't be simple either. I just don't know if that golden spirit root will have any effect. Wang Lin secretly sighed, then he reached out and about 1/3 of all the brilliant golden fruits flew into the air. The mosquito let out a cry of joy as it sucked hard with its mouth and devoured all the brilliant golden fruits. At this moment, a golden light suddenly appeared around the mosquito and flashed brightly 9 times before returning to normal. Seeing that the mosquito seemed to have enough, Wang Lin no longer picked more fruits. His right hand formed a seal and sent out a ray of spiritual energy. This energy landed on the flowers, causing them to release a golden glow. This glow was very blinding. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He didn't back up but instead slapped his bag of holding and took out a large amount of jades. He imprinted his divine sense onto each of the jades and placed one next to each flower. Not far away, the woman named Qian Qin stared at Wang Lin with a confused expression. She didn't know why he wasn't picking the fruit, but instead looked like he was setting up a formation. Could it be that to harvest the brilliant golden fruit, a formation that is required? The confusion in Qian Qin's eyes increased. After placing down the last jade, the pondering expression in Wang Lin's eyes disappeared and was replaced with a sense of clarity. According to the memories of the ancient god, only after this fruit has naturally grown, naturally ripened, and naturally withered will the golden spirit root form. However, I don't have the time to wait right now. The time it takes for the fruits to completely wither is random, it can take days or years. I don't have time to wait, so I have to use this spell from Two Sai's memory. An ancient god uses the bones of a demonic beast, but I'm using jades, so the effect may not be as good. Wang Lin felt helpless about this. With how powerful the ancient gods were, all the materials they used were the best. He faintly shook his hand and then raised it to form a very strange gesture. This gesture was not the seal of a cultivator, but something from the memory of ancient god Tu Sai that had the effect of a catalyst. This was the gesture to activate the formation. Wang Lin muttered, "Die?" After he said that word, A ray of yellow light shot out from his left hand and landed on a jade. The moment the yellow light landed on the jade let out a high-pitched shrill. Shortly after, the jade exploded. This scene caused Wang Lin to frown. Even Qian Qin, who was in the distance, was scared. However, although the jade had exploded, the yellow light didn't disappear but became even stronger. When the jade exploded, the yellow light charged out and landed on another piece of jade. After that there was a series of explosions. At almost the instant the yellow light touched a jade, it would cause it to explode to dust. Wang Lin frowned even harder. After several breaths of time, the yellow light became stronger and stronger. It was now golden and was no different from the color of the flowers. The golden light surrounded all the flowers, causing them to slowly shrink as if they were about to fall off their stems. Not only the flowers, but even the brilliant golden fruits began to shrink and slowly wither. Even the stem was the same, it was as if they were all being baked by intense heat. This scene caused the mosquito beast to let out a series of sad cries and reveal a deep sense of sadness. If it wasn't for the fact that it trusted Wang Lin a lot, it would have already come down to steal the fruits. As for Qian Qin, her heart hurt as she stared at the withering brilliant golden fruits. Her heart bled and ached for the withering fruits. Wang Lin's expression was normal, but his eyes were very serious as he silently stared at the withering brilliant golden fruits. The entire atmosphere of the valley became heavy. It didn't take long for all the golden flower petals to fall. However, the petals didn't fall like normal flowers. Instead, they melted into a golden liquid that fused with the ground. After the petals came the brilliant golden fruits. They also melted into drops of golden liquid that fused with the ground. After that it was the stems. This whole process lasted half an incense stick of time. After that period of time, there was nothing left on the ground. The mosquito let out a sad cry. Its head loosened and it began to pout in the air. Wang Lin's eyes lit up as he walked toward where the brilliant golden fruits once were. He looked at the ground and suddenly his eyes shined brightly. He squatted down and his right hand slowly dug into the ground. He let out a smile as he pulled his hand back and something that shined as brightly as the sun came up with his hand. He had pulled out a mysterious object that looked like a ginseng with 4 whiskers and was glowing like the sun. When one looked at it, they would get a very warm feeling. Wang Lin secretly thought, 4 whisker golden spirit root. If I had let it form naturally, it could have at least reached 5 whiskers. The mosquito in the sky was completely stunned as it stared at the root in Wang Lin's hand. This kind of gaze had never appeared in its eyes before born. This gaze was filled with a hint of madness. Qian Qin also had her small mouth opened as she stared at the root in Wang Lin's hand, and her mind went blank. At this moment, she finally understood that what she thought earlier was her own ignorance. The true use of this brilliant golden fruit was to harvest its roots. Wang Lin plucked 1 whisker and pressed it against his forehead. Shortly after, his expression changed. This object was more effective than the brilliant golden fruit and could make the metal element of the heaven-defying bead increase a bit. However, the amount was simply too small. He calculated that even if he absorbed this entire root, it would only increase the metal element by 10%. He let out a sigh as he plucked a whisker and threw it at the mosquito beast, whose eyes still contained that hint of madness and want but had restrained itself from charging down. The mosquito let out a happy cry as it quickly flew to catch the whisker. With one suck, it completely swallowed the whisker. Only 2 of the 4 whiskers were left. After the mosquito devoured the whisker, the madness in its eyes slowly disappeared. This time, it began to glow, and unlike before, it didn't end and continued to glow. Finally, the mosquito slowly curled up its wings and its entire body curled together. The golden light released from its body became even stronger until it formed a golden cocoon that completely surrounded the mosquito. The golden cocoon slowly darkened as it completely surrounded the mosquito, making it so no one could see inside. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he forced his divine sense into the cocoon. After observing it a bit, he revealed a happy smile. After the mosquito has devoured so many treasures, it is finally going to evolve. Its strength should increase a lot this time. Wang Lin's right hand reached out and the golden cocoon was put away into the bag of holding. After he put it away, he pondered a bit and waved his hand, causing a ray of green light to appear. When the green light appeared, it turned into a giant thunder toad and landed with a thud. Its eyes were filled with laziness. However, this laziness completely disappeared when it saw the two whiskers in Wang Lin's eyes. The lazy gaze turned into a serious stare. Wang Lin faintly smiled, then he plucked one whisker and threw it at the thunder toad. The thunder toad's stomach expanded and a red tongue shot out from its mouth. The whisker that was in the air disappeared without a trace. A thunderous roar came from the thunder toad, then it slowly began to close its eyes as if it was very tired. Wang Lin pressed at the air and returned the thunder toad back to his bag of holding, then he looked at the woman, Qian Qin, who was still watching. When Qian Qin noticed Wang Lin's gaze, her body trembled. She quickly bowed but didn't say a word. I was able to obtain this golden spirit root thanks to your luck. You can take this last whisker. With that, Wang Lin plucked the last whisker and put away the main root for his original body. He took one step, then his body turned into green gas and disappeared without a trace. Qian Qin was startled and subconsciously caught the whisker floating toward her. Everything before her was like a dream, she wouldn't dare to believe it was all true. When she turned her head, the man named Wang Lin was already gone without a trace. Qian Qin stood there for a very long time before putting away the whisker. She walked up to her fellow sect member, then she let out a sigh and quickly left this place. Wang Lin's body moved like lightning. It didn't take long before he crossed a mountain range and entered the depths of this land. Here was where the short elder of the Da Lu sword sect was sitting in the lotus position on a giant tree with an extremely pale face. 1 inch away from between his brows was the half-moon blade, which seemed to just be floating there. 1 inch above his head was the celestial sword, it was also just floating there. Although the sword was motionless, it gave off a powerful sword energy. This video will end here.